As the curtain rises to the beginning of a story familiar to many of us, it does so against a troubled backdrop. All of the legendary leaders of Israel, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, all of them are dead. The people of Israel aren't living in the promised land, but instead find themselves residing as refugees in Egypt, a strange land with strange customs. And now, to make matters even worse, there's a new person in charge. A new king whose only concern seems to be that the people of Israel have become so numerous that he is in danger of losing his power. And so his solution is to reduce them to subclass citizens, enslave them, and put them to work building cities. It's a tactic that has worked well for many countries throughout the centuries. Many countries, including our own. The U.S. used Africans to pick our cotton, Chinese to build our railroads, and Mexicans to harvest our crops. And a lynching tree has always served us well to keep them in line and as a reminder of who is in charge. There is a video circulating on social media right now in which a Chinese man is having a dinner conversation with a white nationalist. When asked why he was so afraid of the dispossession of whites in America, the white nationalist replied, "Because I want my people to survive. If we become a minority, we will not control our own destiny anymore." Apparently, this was the same fear of the Pharaoh in this morning's text, the fear of losing power and control. But people of different races, ethnicities, and cultures aren't the only ones who suffer at the hands of those in power. Ever since the marriage equality ruling, the LGBTQ community has experienced a backlash from those who are in power. Women's rights are legislated by white male evangelicals who have been voted into office. Once upon a time, it was the poor who couldn't afford health care, but today rich lawmakers are making it difficult for the middle class population to afford it. The list could go on. But the overarching theme is the same. Those in power feel threatened by the increasing number of those who are not in power, and so the powerful oppress the powerless even more to keep them in their place at the bottom of the heap. It's enough to send a person spiraling off into despair. Things had gotten so bad in our story that the king even declared state-imposed infanticide. In order to reduce the ever-growing Israelite population, he ordered all male babies to be killed at birth. And so inevitably the question arises, where is God in all of this? Where is God when people are going hungry while the rate of obesity steadily increases? Where is God when teenagers are kicked out of their homes because they are lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender and find themselves hustling on the streets? Where is God when our governor signs into law a bill that will force women to buy supplemental insurance to cover the horrific possibility of rape or incest, as if the disproportionately poor and low-income patients who are more likely to be victims of rape could afford such a thing? Where is God? And where is God in this morning's story when male babies are being ordered to be put to death? Well, as I see it, God was in a couple of unobtrusive but defiant women whose names were Shiphrah and Puah. Two midwives who obeyed their hearts and their conscience, even when they conflicted with obedience to unjust laws. Instead of killing the male babies as they had been ordered, these two brave women of character allowed the babies to live. When questioned, they said that the Israelite women were so robust that they managed to have their children before the two midwives could arrive on the scene. Now, I can't imagine that Shiphrah and Puah were the only midwives for the entire nation. And in their resistance as they defied the Pharaoh's orders, I also imagined them at times wondering if they were really making any difference against the Pharaoh's tidal wave of paranoia-driven hatred and evil. Their situation reminds me of a story of a man who one day was walking along a beach, enjoying the morning sun and cool breeze from the ocean. Suddenly, far off in the distance, he saw what looked like someone dancing. But as he drew closer, the man noticed that it was a little girl picking up a starfish from the shore and tossing them back into the ocean. As he approached the girl, he paused for a moment and, kind of puzzled, then asked, "Young lady, why are you throwing starfish into the ocean?" And she replied, "Well, the sun is up and the tide is going out. If I leave these starfish on the beach, the sun will dry them up and they'll die." And the man said, "But there are thousands of starfish washed up along this beach for miles. You can't possibly make a difference." The young girl thought for a moment, then slowly leaned over and carefully picked up another starfish from the sand. And with the starfish in hand, she turned to the man and gently said, "You may be right, but it'll make a difference to this one." And with that, she reached back and threw the starfish as far as she could back into the ocean. Shiphrah and Puah were like the little girl, defiantly saving one life after another, not concerned with themselves or with numbers, but instead with simply doing what was right and just. Where is God? God was in a couple of midwives who refused to obey an unjust law. And God is in a little girl who throws starfish back into the sea. And God is in you and me when we do the same. When we are undaunted by the task before us and without concerning ourselves about changing the world, we focus our efforts on rescuing just one more starfish. There are probably more ways than you might imagine that we can do that. 40% of homeless youth are LGBT, and there is a center not far from here that addresses the needs of homeless teens in Waco. You may not be able to support it in the way you would like, but think of a single dollar as a starfish. If each of us can give $1 extra above our regular offering each week, we would make the difference in the life of one youth. And wouldn't that be worth it? We may feel overwhelmed by death. We don't know how to deal with it. And so the temptation is to turn away from it altogether. But what if we occasionally picked up a tube of scented hand and body cream so hospice patients could feel better about themselves? I've tasted some of the delicious desserts at Potluck. What if we volunteered to provide the desserts for Thanksgiving at a local hospice? The smile on a person's face who has been given only weeks or months to live is one more starfish that we managed to save. It's easy to forget about HIV and AIDS. After all, modern medications have made it a manageable disease, right? Well, just doesn't feel so manageable to the person who is battling the stigma of the disease while trying to make it through one more day by keeping food on the table and juggling the bills. When you pick up one extra canned food item for our church's HIV food pantry, the gratitude of a person who uses the pantry is one more starfish that has been saved. When you write a letter to a lawmaker telling them you support equality for all people and oppose a particular piece of legislation that oppresses someone, think of that letter as a starfish. When you write a note to someone who is in prison, letting them know that they are not forgotten, that you care about them, the note you receive in return is evidence that you made a difference in the life of at least one starfish. Shifra and Puah defied the odds by doing what was right. We are called to do the same. But the question before us is, how will we do that? How is God calling this church to make a difference? What will it look like? We might begin by throwing a starfish back into the sea with an extra $1 in the basket, an extra canned food item from the grocery store, or a nice smelling tube of hand cream for someone who is dying. But where will it lead us? How is God calling us to serve our neighbor? Being church is more than showing up for an hour once a week at a building. Being church means loving our neighbor. And the questions before us are, who is our neighbor and how will we serve them? I want to encourage you to be in prayer about this. Be in prayer, but be ready to be surprised at where and how God shows up. Amen.